Let's get more on that story. The shooting down of that Russian military jet did cause a major rift, resulting in tough talk by both sides, and Russia imposed sanctions against Turkey. The Kremlin ordered sanctions on food products sent to Turkey. Russian goods made up 10% of Turkey's total imports last year. Russia also called for an end to visa-free travel between Russia and Turkey. Moscow also encouraged Russian tourists to boycott Turkey as a travel destination. According to the Turkish Ministry of Culture and Tourism, Russians used to be the second largest group of visitors to Turkey. Let's get more analysis on this. I'm joined by Emre Ersen. He's a lecturer at Marmara University here in Istanbul and an expert on Turkish and Russian relations. Emre, many thanks for joining us today. Turkey seems to be going out on this all-out diplomatic fence-mending campaign, apologizing to Russia on the same day as it mends its ties with Israel after a 6-year freeze. What's going on? Why now?
Well, definitely one of the reasons is that Turkey was stuck in the foreign policy. So by making these moves vis-a-vis both Russia and Israel, Turkey expects to open a new field in foreign policy, definitely. And when we're talking about Turkish-Russian relations, we're not actually talking about a simple bilateral relationship. There is a very powerful regional dimension to it. For example, only a few months ago in the Caucasus, Azerbaijan and Armenia started fighting again over Nagorno-Karabakh. And in the Black Sea, on the other hand, Turkey's position militarily moved closer to NATO rather than Russia. But most importantly, we need to remember why these two countries have been dragged into such a serious crisis. It was because of the Syrian civil war, and their regional differences are not resolved in that crisis as well. So I think this very powerful regional dimension obliges both governments to reach an understanding, at least in the short term.
As you say, there's a massive risk between Moscow and Ankara over Syria. They're both backing opposing sides in the conflict. That hasn't changed. So how will it play into that?
Well, I mean, when you take a look at the position of Turkey currently, we also need to be very cautious, because especially when you take a look at the Russian media and the remarks made there, they claim, for example, that Turkey has actually admitted full responsibility for the incident that happened in Syria regarding the downing of the Russian fighter jet. But for Ankara, for example, they believe that this is rather an indirect apology to the family of the Russian pilot who died during the incident. So we have to be very cautious. But I think the news are quite promising as well regarding Turkish-Russian relations, because this week President Erdogan and President Putin are expected to make a telephone conversation, for example. And this is also very important because the two leaders have never directly contacted each other ever since the crisis. And next week we also expect Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu to visit Sochi to attend the summit of the Black Sea Cooperation Organization. So we have promising news, but the regional differences in Syria are still there. So
why this push? Why this push to improve relations? I mean, we talked about the economic consequences of the freezing of the relations, the sanctions imposed by Russia. Is this economic?
Not purely economic, it's also quite strategic, because we have to remember that throughout the 2000s, Turkey and Russia regarded each other as strategic partners. Yes, there are very important economic interests, but also I also mentioned the regional dimension of the Turkish-Russian relations as well. Regarding Syria, if Turkey wants to achieve a new breakthrough in Syria, it has to reach an understanding with Russia. And because this is realpolitik, unfortunately, in international relations, it is important that you have friendly relations with countries, but it's also important that you follow your interests. And Turkey's interest currently in the Middle East, which is also indicated by the agreement reached by Israel, also shows us that Turkey needs to achieve a new breakthrough in its relationship with Russia, because Russia is currently Turkey's direct neighbor in Syria as well.
Okay, Emre, good to speak to you. Emre Ersen there, a lecturer at Marmara University and a specialist on Turkey and Russia. Many thanks.
Thank you.